Good evening and welcome to the Minions of the Zoo. This is episode 1224 of the Minions of the Zoo night stream, and with us tonight we have guests DrFunctional.
Good evening.
Sora Luna.
Hello.
Serenity Star 13.
Howdy ho.
Skep Tock.
Hi, everybody.
And a muted Geodes. I don't know if he's...
Hello.
There he is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the new intro, Harry.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I obsessed over it probably more than was healthy, but I learned a lot about how to use the editing software. So,
Are those guys in your home? Did you just play it, or?
They stay in the corner. I occasionally throw silver dollars at them when I need them to change the mood.
Yeah.
The Harry
That's
Channel
the
live in-home band, baby. Mm.
The house band. It goes with the pool table.
Yeah.
Do you
No,
know
that was high quality. That's that mellow jazz time to just let the day's cares evaporate and kick back with old Harry.
Well, it is Saturday, and
Yeah, it is.
Saturday
It's
doesn't
perfect
need to
music
be
for it.
uptight.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it sounds like one of those late night radio host openings.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Master of Puppets doesn't work for Saturday night relaxation stream.
yeah. There are a lot of.
That's
pieces
from that
of
new
music
band
that doesn't work.
Metallica.
I have some
Give him
Metallica
an
on my
ass.
soundboard.
Well, it is
If you want
Harry,
to
and he is the man, so we could play when the man comes around.
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't it them assholes that took everybody to court because of Napster? Them bastards.
Yeah. Music should be free, man. Music and the nipple.
Free the music.
Hey!
Is
Let's
that a
not go
thing?
too far, Harry. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah.
It depends on whose nipples, what it depends on.
Yeah, it's never the ones you want.
Just look at those fat acceptance photos that I tweet out every once in a while if you don't believe me.
Why don't
Oh,
Americans
yeah.
want nude parks? The reason being is because we know all the fat, ugly people are going to be the ones in the park, not the pretty ones.
Yeah.
That's why.
Sales of wide-angle lenses skyrocket in fashion photography.
Yeah.
That actually wouldn't really happen because as you change aspects of lenses, it makes people's proportions look different.
It's just a funny thing to say, that's all.
It is
It
a
has
funny
nothing,
thing to say.
no basis in reality at all.
But
The
you
wide
actually
angle. You gotta
kind
need a wide angle lens for that fat ass. No,
yeah, but you do actually. You use it like for portraiture. You usually use something like a 70 or a 90 millimeter lens,
Yep.
which gives you a mild telephoto
Yeah.
because it changes the way the head and the shape looks relative to the rest of the body. Because optics are not perfect, so you have to know how to work their imperfection to your advantage. So,
when
did
in doubt-
anybody? Does anybody have anything they need to get off their chest before we dive into the news?
The only thing that I wanted to say was if people should join us for the Star Trek stream on Saturday afternoon, on those occasions when we actually have it, we have a pretty good time, and so does chat. So I'll just say it was another good time today, and sorry for the shameless shill, but it really is kind of a cool little stream. And if you're into Star Trek and just want to have a little bit of fun on Saturday afternoon, join us on Blind Press Channel at 4 o'clock Central Time on Saturdays and have some fun for an hour.
Oh, let's see. I'm taking a look at chat. Oh, IP's here. Dr.
I rate prostates on that.
Check
that
is
stream.
here. Terry's here. I cannot. How do you pronounce Xaublae? Zauble?
Zauble?
No idea.
Zauble, maybe?
Type phonetically how we're supposed to say your name.
Yeah, it's your fault that I can't pronounce it. That and that I'm incompetent. Mr. Yes was here about 4 or 5 hours early, so
You probably thought it was early because I remember looking at my YouTube page going, wait a damn minute. Did I miss a memo?
let's see. Raymond Lewis. Oh, well, all right. Well,
Welcome. Mr. Yes likes your intro song, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually kind of agonized over tone, and it kind of suits my personality. I mean, aside from being good for the show, I was kind of listening to it as I was editing, going, "Yeah, that's actually not bad."
Well, it
That's
also
okay.
fits your logo really well too.
Yeah. Good times.
Goose-
Zaubla.
Oh, blah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we'll go with that. I'm still gonna screw it up though.
We all are. We still can't get Terry's last name right.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Well, of course, everybody gets to drink when we screw it up, so that's
Exactly.
worth it for everybody. Let's see. Well, we have a couple things to look at here. Hopefully, a little more leisurely pace than the last Saturday show, where I miscalculated horribly. Let's not repeat that ever again. Let's see. Did you guys see this on the Twitter?
Yes.
So apparently, old man Biden decided that he was going to get feisty and make a few salty comments about Russia.
Oh, God, moron.
Corn
And,
Putin was a bad dude.
Putin was a bad dude.
Corn Putin.
Corn Putin?
Corn
Putin was
Putin.
a bad dude.
He's the white version of Corn Pop.
Who's
So,
this
yeah,
corn
'cause-
pop? I know not of this man.
Sorry.
Well, here's him actually talking. Let's see if this actually works.
Oh,
Я бы
God.
сказал ему,
Can you hear it?
будьте
Yep.
здоровы.
Okay.
Я желаю ему здоровья. Говорю это без иронии, без шуток. Я бы сказал ему, будьте здоровы. Я желаю ему здоровья. Говорю это без иронии, без шуток.
Why most to
Я бы
Nice, that's a nice
сказал
little
ему,
country you got there. It'd be a shame
Будьте
if something
здоровы.
happened to it.
я желаю ему здоровья. Говорю это без иронии, без шуток. Я бы сказал ему, будьте здоровы.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
So,
So you
what did
just
he
keep
call
saying that over and over again?
Apparently, that's the way Twitter works.
Yeah, it'll just
Called
keep
him a
repeating
killer?
it. That's how a lot of times it gets the views up so high. It's the
I
same thing
watched
with
that thing for
TikTok.
2 hours. I thought it was a movie.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed how many people do.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
boring
it's
movie.
oh Lord.
Yeah. I do like though that of course then from everything I've read on this too, it went to him going on about how like reminding America of its dark past using nuclear weaponry and all this other stuff too, because apparently there was further parts of that speech, I guess. And it was just one of those things where it's like, oh boy.
It's like, Russia, do we need to talk about what y'all did to the Jews? Because we can talk about it. But I still, it's one of those things, it's because I've seen this said a lot. It's like, oh God, I actually think stuff that Putin says is funny because Biden's a moron. Because they're also used to how Trump hits back. And Trump, for everything he's worth, has kid gloves sometimes. He's not as, like, Trump never said anything that not even vaguely, that threatening before or anything like that. And so they think they can hit back at people like this. And it's like, you stupid motherfucker.
Well, about 70, 80% of what most people say, even really bad people, is probably pretty mundane stuff. We tend to focus on the crazy 20%.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
if you went to talk to like a YAF person or somebody who's sort of not full-on alt-right, but just kind of ethnic nationalist, you'd probably agree about a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
About potholes getting fixed and kids going back to school, you would agree about a tremendous number of things. So it shouldn't be surprising that Putin says things that everything he says isn't crazy.
Oh, yeah,
The
no.
reason you would think that everything's crazy is because of the distortion field of the news.
Well, it's not so much I think anything's crazy that comes from Putin. It's just, like, the man is cunning to a point that Hillary thinks she is. Let's put it that way. Like, he's been very
He
good
could be
at
a
keeping...
good Cardassian.
Yes, very much so.
He doesn't really
Um,
ask for it, though.
But that's the thing is, like, he's what...
Oh, that's Kardashian. Sorry.
Yeah. He's what a lot of these people like Hillary and so many others and Kamala, like, convince themselves that they're this cunning or vaguely threatening, and they're not, because it's just like, I don't believe a fucking word coming out of your mouth. With Putin, it's like, I don't know, like, the man's been able to keep power pretty damn well in his own country.
Well, he keeps the people who are actually in power happy, and so they're happy about that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think, you know, I mean, I love the memes of Putin with him riding bears and
Oh, yeah, that's
triceratops and pterodactyls and everything.
great.
He's extremely memeable. But let's,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
Russia's wrong.
I'm sure we'll be talking about Russia and Biden
Oh.
for a long time to come.
Russia,
God.
Russia,
What
Russia.
about this particular story? I think, Serenity, you sent me this, right?
Yeah.
So 5 Biden White House staffers have lost jobs over past marijuana use, says Psaki.
Supposedly there's more people on the chopping block too, but this is just the ones they've confirmed so far.
Yeah. Well,
And when you
I mean,
consider the vice president, like you bitch.
yeah, so the vice president, you know, used it. She's not going anywhere because she's in a
Yeah.
special category of hire. She's no, Kamala's not going anywhere over anything like that. But Biden has had a real hard-on for the drug war. He was one of the big, most hawkish Democrats in the drug war back in the day. And we talked
Partially
about
because he's
civil-
so stupid.
Well, right. We talked about the whole civil asset forfeiture thing and went over
Yeah.
his history, I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe.
Yes.
And we don't need to retread that. But it's hardly surprising that a Biden White House would be such a weird, nonsensical, and conflicted place.
He's going to get after this war on drugs because it's worked so well so far.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
and the way you do that is by leaving the border open.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you.
I wonder if it's
a lot of jobs.
I wonder if it's partially because of you know, certain family members as well, but I don't know for certain.
What are you trying to imply, Gio?
Yeah.
Nothing at all.
But
Well, no,
I don't feel sad.
He should want to be legalizing it if he wants Hunter to keep him supplied with that really cool talcum powder he likes to sniff.
in all seriousness, though, is it directly because of their past marijuana use? Because it's giving us Psaki's giving conflicting messages. So where's the truth?
No, she's
Yes.
she never.
Is it
she
other
never contradicts
reasons? Is it
herself.
just the regular turnover, and there just happens to be?
Well, here's what it's all kidding aside. Here's what I think is going on with respect to her seemingly contradictory message. What she's saying is, we fired a whole bunch of people because they used marijuana back in the day.
Yeah.
And we want everybody to know that if we know that you used marijuana, that's an extra handle we have to be able to move you around and make you do exactly what we want you to and say what we want you to say. That said, we will allow some of the people who are useful to us to remain in their positions as long as they know that we know that they use this, and we could haul this out and murder them and murder their job anytime we want to. Love, Jen. I think that's what's if you really uncover everything, that's what's being said both to the people and who work there and the world, is that if we understand that you've used marijuana in the past, you know, we've got you. Now that there's a whole thing that wasn't even mentioned in all of this that I think is really important. I think some people on this stream probably might know where I'm going here. And that is,
Okay.
I can always tell the people who have really had a BI, a background inquiry done on them for a truly high clearance, a clearance that is top secret or higher. And because of the stories that they tell. And one of the things that you find out when you have this done is they tell you, we don't care whether you've done drugs or not. What we care is that you be honest with us now and disclose every single drug you ever did. Because we don't care about your moral character. We care about your blackmailability. So we want you to understand that we are your father confessor. You confess everything to us now because we want you for this job, and we don't really give a shit what you've done in the past. Where this is exactly the way it was explained to me. And I came clean. I told them, yeah, here's the deal. And I told them all the stuff, and it was exhaustive, and it was a long interview process. And then they went back and started contacting all my old friends. You hear from all your old friends, hey, these guys are talking to me, this, that, and the other thing. And that's the thing that they're really worried about. Yeah, in some of these sensitive positions, are people being blackmailed by somebody who comes up and says, I know what you did. But what I find interesting is that never came up in any of the discussions, and I don't think Jen Psaki is capable of even understanding that principle, the way that works, or understanding that really happens.
She doesn't need to, she doesn't need to understand things for her job. And in fact, it's probably better if she doesn't.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
I literally am half joking there.
Probably keeps her alive.
But
I know what you're trying to say, Harry.
Like 5/8
no, but
of the joke.
You just tied a nice little bow on that story, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next thing, which is really pretty terrible. But Geodes wants to talk about it anyway.
Thanks, Geodes.
Yeah. So up in British Columbia, there is a father who has been trying to. It sounds like he's been combating a bit of indoctrination from what sounds like the school system that his daughter is going to, as well as possibly his ex-spouse, in terms of transgender language. And recently, he was basically arrested for referring to his daughter by her biological pronouns. When she is wanting to be referred to as as he and she, or he and, well, not he and she, he and him, I'm assuming.
Thanks. So hold on. So this was the one where the school decided, without the consent of the parents, that they were just going to help the child socially transition, or am I confused?
The school has been doing some of that. Apparently, I was reading a couple of other articles. There's one of the things they did was for her yearbook. They went ahead and changed her name. I guess she has a different name she goes by, without the parents' permission. In the yearbook, which I guess that there was that aspect. There's also been a couple other things as far as, from what I understand, there's a program being put in place. I think it's in place in Ontario as well, but I've only been able to confirm that there's two things for this program in British Columbia and Alberta called SOGI 123. Which is basically a program to teach K through 12 about LGBTQ plus issues, gender pronouns, how to be respectful and how to be understanding. And it's a mess. It's a real fucking mess. So
okay, just so I'm a stupid man, let me just recite this as I think I understand it. Mm-hmm. It says that the guy was found to be in contempt of court and was actually arrested because he spoke of the child. He referred to the child, who is biologically a female, okay, with XX chromosomes, but the little girl now identifies herself as a male, and but the father used the pronouns she and her. So the father sued the mother after learning that she had allowed the teenager to begin transitioning, and evidently these are hormonal changes and potentially, I guess, surgical. And so mom and dad are not together, and the father made his objection to the gender change clear, and the court ordered him to refrain from speaking out in public or to the media. And I found that's really sinister right here, or to the media on the issue, saying that any effort to do so would be considered to be a, quote, form of family violence. This is why I've been jumping up and down. Yeah, this is why I've been jumping up and down about people doing bad things, doing mischief with the language, because that's how they do this. All of a sudden, speaking the pronouns that the child has said he or she doesn't want to be called is now equated to a form of family violence and gets the same penalty from a court, gets the same sanction from the court system, that as though you had gone up to the child and broken its arm.
Yeah.
And so this guy could go to jail for up to 5 years, okay, for simply calling his daughter, he considers her to still be a daughter, and using pronouns that are appropriate for a female. This is madness.
It's Canada.
I actually have a summary of the gag order as well. I can read off if you'd
Go.
like.
Go.
So, summary gag order. 1, AB, a 14-year-old transgender boy. I guess the AB is the name that the child's going by. Applies for protection or to restrain his father, CD, from publishing, speaking, or giving interviews about this case or about AB's personal and medical information. I guess maybe it's a different reference. I'm not sure.
Well,
but
they've anonymized it for since it's a minor.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. So A, CD shall be restrained from 1, attempting to persuade AB to abandon treatment for gender dysphoria, 2, addressing AB by his birth name, and 3, referring to AB as a girl or with female pronouns, whether to AB directly or to third parties. B, CD shall not directly or indirectly through agent or third party publish or share information or documentation relating to AB's sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, mental or physical health, medical status, or therapies. And then let's see. I guess that's about the overall quick summary. I thought there was a bit more, but that's the overall summary of the gag order that I'm seeing. So
Well, that's depressing enough.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
They in what I have a paragraph from what was from the Supreme Court of BC ruling here. From the 20th paragraph, they're talking about why it's considered family violence. So basically, they say that family violence can take many forms. It's a family violence is defined in Section 1 of the FLA or the Family Law Act of BC, but that definition is inclusive and not exclusive. The inclusive definition of family violence recognizes that the risk of harm extends beyond the infliction of physical violence. They quote a case here, Morgadino at paragraph 59. I note that in particular, the definition encompasses psychological abuse in the form of harassment or coercion and unreasonable restrictions of or preventions of a family member's personal autonomy. In the case of a child, both direct and indirect exposure to such harm may constitute family violence.
So
they're
basically
using
what you're saying is that the school and the mother are complicit in this type of violence, only they're not being charged in any way.
Yes, because they are going with what the child is expressing as what they want. But the father who was against this, which it's what's interesting in this case, and I don't know if that happened in the previous at the start of all this. So before we know about this particular part of the case, but if their divorce order was such that in most cases when there wasn't both parents are allowed visitation or whatever, the contact with the child. So usually there's something in place where any serious medical decisions must be brought forward to both parents. Obviously not in an emergency setting because that's the life of the child comes first, but in terms of something really large that takes planning. For example, I don't know, taking like puberty blockers or other such like transitioning hormones, potentially getting a double mastectomy for those who were assigned female at birth, which is they use that terminology in this case. So if that was the case where that was written down in the divorce settlement or whatever, and the parent and the school, basically the mother and the school superseded the rights of the father as the father to say no to the transitioning of the parent, but then the courts just turn around and say it doesn't matter, our law doesn't matter, that this is what your divorce thing said. This is going to be huge issue.
My understanding from the previous articles that I've read about this case was that they had shared custody, 50-50. So
okay, well, even worse.
I think that those are the grounds on which Mr. Hoogland is trying to contest this and stop it, because it started when the child was about 12, I think, and somewhere just before 14 is when they
11. She stated that she
started at
identified 11,
but I don't
and
think it
started
was
treatment
until
at 13.
14, just before 14 is when they actually started giving them the drugs.
Yeah, she started transition treatment at 13.
So this has been a long played out thing, and now she's 50. The child is 15, and he's still trying to fight for his rights as a parent, which in Canada, men have no rights in family court. Full stop.
Yeah.
Well, it's
So
like even the school officials pulled in a psychologist to to talk to her, and then she decided to go on testosterone.
Yeah.
But it was a very transition-friendly psychologist, and there are those people.
Oh yeah.
And the father was not informed of this.
Yeah.
Nope.
Do you want to talk about kids in cages now?
Real fun.
I prefer my children free-ranged. And
Okay, one last thing, Geodes.
One last thing. All I'm going to say is everybody was talking about, C16, people saying that, being forced to say certain pronouns as by law would not happen, and this is a perfect case of that exactly happening. So, anyways,
they always knew it was going to happen.
We won't throw you in jail.
That's
We'll
a federal
fine you.
case. We're talking provincially, and thank God Ontario shut that shit down 2 years ago. So, but kids in cages.
The way it works is, they won't throw you in jail. They'll fine you, but then if you don't pay the fine or can't pay the fine, then they throw you in jail. Perfect system. It's not the same thing as throwing you in jail. You're going to jail for not paying the fine. But anyway,
you have a chance.
Hey, do you guys remember, use the Wayback Machine to how Trump was the big bad meanie because he was trying to control through Mike Pence's office all the discussions of the coronavirus? You remember that? And how he was a fascist and he was Mussolini, and he was like Mussolini and Hitler had a love child, and just what a big meanie he was for that. And but this is fine, right? This is fine. The Biden administration limits what Border Patrol can share with media about migrant surge at border. Let's see, who sent this one to me?
Probably me.
Serenity, yes. So, is there anything you would like to say about this?
That apparently an update to the story as of today, I think about 15 hours ago, they were opening another facility back up to put people in.
But it's more about the news blackout, right?
Oh yeah. Well,
the problem is
they're conflicting. Some are saying that it's a complete and utter news blackout. Some are saying they are being restricted on what they can reveal for, air quotes, the protection of the children. So it's depending on who you talk to, but let's face facts. They're trying to curtail as much as they can about getting out about how many of these kids, because there's horror stories.
It'd be a shame if you said something and you lost that job.
There's horror stories about kids not seeing daylight.
Well, they're trying to control the narrative.
Yeah,
is basically all it is, to put it in political speak.
Yeah. No, I get that. It's just
them. I mean, if you were in his position, you would want to control this shitty narrative too.
I don't agree with the thing being controlled, but I understand why they're doing it. But it's one of those things where it's kind of like there's so many stories coming about the living conditions being terrible, there being too many people to a room, some kids not seeing daylight or showers for days, there not being enough food, just all kinds of stuff. And it's getting, like, as much as I know this sounds terrible, but on some level, I'm hoping this gets out to south of the border, because maybe some of the people will stop. But even Mexico's starting to go after Biden for this. They're like, what the fuck, dude?
I still see this as primarily a story about the press.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, because bad things are going to happen. The only thing is we have two things that have happened about a year apart, or less than a year apart. And the press treated one president a particular way, in the least charitable way possible. On this, they're barely able to bring themselves to actually criticize him. I mean, this is really tepid criticism. Biden administration limits what Border Patrol can share with media about migrant surge. Some have released videos of the border surge anyway.
Good.
Well, where's the outrage? Where's the outrage about them controlling the narrative? There is none, because the media are all a bunch of shills.
Yeah, they're part of it. And they're not the news. They're not journalism anymore. They're just there to spin the narrative. There's culprits on multiple sides. They're not there to give you the facts. And this is part of that, where they're saying, well, we're going to make the media less culpable because we're saying, well, we're not going to give you the facts, so you can't report on them.
Well, it's like the next line says, the officials say the restrictions are seen as an unofficial gag order. So they're not. There's nothing on the books about a gag order. they're
it's
at least
unofficial in the same sense that marijuana policy is unofficial. What Skep
Yeah.
said, they'll just add it to the list of things they can use to get rid of you if it's expedient.
oh
That's
yeah,
a real
but
nice government pension you're about
Yep.
to get. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
well, and that's
2
kind of
days
the
to
thing
retirement.
is like also if it's not on the books, no one can find it. So if there's no official gag order, no one can do Freedom of Information Act or anything like that to get it.
I just love that they're saying it's to protect the children. And again, it's won't somebody think of the children? It's when in fact it's basically just no. It's all
so nice
political
that
stuff.
they're using it like a smoke screen.
Back to the
Mhm.
media thing, like look at how they treated Biden falling 3 times up the stairs versus Trump walking down the incline and kind of doing a little jog for the last like 2 meters.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Or holding the
So, like,
handrail.
oh my God, he's losing it. He lost his balance. He went for. They acted as if he crashed Air Force One, and then they look at Biden. They're like, that was nothing. No, that was nothing.
It was wind
Is it?
gusts of 13 miles per hour. That's what did it.
I thought it was a golf. I thought it was a golf ball to the back of the head, but you know,
You're taking this political weather vane thing a little too seriously. But the my question is, does anybody have a good sense of the financial status of the major news networks? Because before
know
Trump came along, CNN looked like they were about ready to have a fire sale and sell off all the fixtures.
Well, they're
According
about
to what
to
Crowder
back-
said, it's been down substantially. Take that for what you will. I haven't really looked into it from other sources.
Well, the thing is, that is a qualitative thing. Like, for instance, the quartering. The quartering, he's a big old doofusy chump of a guy. But he will have these headlines where he'll be like, this stock crashes or adjusts or, gets slaughtered. It's like, I'm
Clickbaity.
sorry, a 5%
Yeah.
adjustment in the market or less
Is
not
nothing.
a slaughter. That's nothing.
He's,
so
he's
people
playing
play up
the
these
algorithm.
differences.
That's part of what he does for a living. So, I mean, it makes me not want to watch his stuff anymore because it is all basically clickbaity, but it works. It gets
Well, is
people
the-
clicks.
Is the press going to, at some point, break just because they have to start attacking Biden to get views?
They're gonna
no,
have
they'll pick other targets.
Yeah, but what if there are none? That's the thing. Like, okay, so as of the
Putin.
first quarter of 2021, not going to work because Putin's.
Tucker. I mean, like, it's not like these things aren't always being attacked by them, but that's what's going to be in the news cycle again. It's not going to be as crazy and amazing as Trump tweets 24/7, but it'll still be there. That's what they'll continue doing, and they'll try to make baseless tie-ins to Trump to sort of get that sort of soundbite. I think it's going to fail. I think their business model is crumbling. It always has been. It's been on a steady decline. Trump gave them a boost, but now that that's out of the picture, there's no anomaly to keep them afloat. They're going to They're going to go down again.
Well, as of right now, the first quarter of this year, so far, Fox News is averaging 1.3, CNN's averaging 1.9 million, and MSNBC is averaging 1.6. Which, when you consider that CNN's numbers used to be 5 million and stuff like that, it's down.
Sure.
yeah.
Fox's
This is via
numbers are way
Nielsen.
down.
Yeah, this is via Nielsen. OAN is not measured by Nielsen, so we have no idea. And all that kind of stuff.
One thing I will say too is, I mean, I expect we'll probably actually get media bailouts effectively, and the reason why is, I mean, they kind of did that with like Twitter and a bunch of these other companies because they were supposedly like media platforms to help get information out. I think they might end up doing the same thing here because that's
If they haven't already in the stimulus bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have an
So-
opinion about this, Skep?
I was looking at let's see, CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. I'm getting some information from The Economist and from Pew Research. I'm just kind of putting it together here. Okay, total revenue across the three channels increased in 2018, and that was the last time it has increased. It has decreased the last. I'm sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, it's they've had a net decrease in revenue for the last 2 years. That just have kind of a dopey graph that isn't really too, but it's like 40 or 50 million dollars in gross receipts down over the last year, and that is Fox, CNN, and MSNBC. MSNBC is a little bit steeper.
Maybe they'll start bombing North Korea and ratings will go back up again. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, newsroom spending for all three networks is about $725 million. Their revenue is about $2 billion. So they're still making $1 billion a year. So it's still, they're going to be there. They're not selling off stuff or anything like that. Interestingly enough, the median wage for editors, and this is MSNBC, Fox, and CNN, I'm just averaging these, I'm getting $62,000 per year. That was from 2018. Reporters were getting $53,000. Camera operators and film and video editors were getting $49,000, and photographers were getting $47,000. And the rest of the stuff is pretty detailed. But anyway, yeah, it's basically a gentle decline in revenue. But it might be more interesting to do an analysis of the change in their viewer demographics and look for trends in that, because I think the big crunch has not hit them yet, and I think that you might be able to discern when that's going to happen when you start to see the types of people who are watching begin to change to less desirable demographics. We begin to see trends shifting that way. That's when the advertising dollars will dip. And when advertising dollars dip, I've spent a lot of time in the advertising business on the revenue, particularly revenue analysis side, in another life, in yet another life. When those numbers dip, they dip very quickly. I mean, it's like advertisers don't really cut back. It's not like the movies. We're going to cut back our ad placements, and no, they don't do that. They stop returning your phone calls. They vanish, and you have to go and find people who will buy revenues at much lower rates. That's how your revenues decline. And so all of a sudden, Ford and Chevrolet are not advertising with you at all. They won't even talk to you anymore. Your best buddies that have been advertising with you for 10 years, they will not speak to you. And so then you have to go down and say, okay, well, we'll get, Costco or some, somebody who's going to pay a much lower rate because, advertising is less important to them than a car company. And so, anyway, it's a complicated business, but I have the feeling, in summation, that these guys are cruising for a bruise and they're about to get killed.
Yeah, agreed.
I think it'll happen in the next year or two.
Well, it's like we've already started to see that kind of start with Huffington Post, because when they got bought out by BuzzFeed, they shut down Huffington Post Canada. Now, it wasn't a lot of workers, to be completely fair.
It was 45 workers up there.
Yeah, but still, that's 45 people who don't have a job no more and who aren't going to have an easy time getting one.
Yeah.
Science.
Yes, science. Well, okay.
Science.
I mean, again, a lot of these topics, we talk about them, and I know I kind of keep a brisk pace going, but a lot of it's because I know we're coming back. These topics are not going away.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about them over and over again. And
we're just visiting them today.
Yes. We're just visiting them today, and it's like, for instance, we will be back talking about the Prosperity Lander at some point in the not too distant future. But right now, we've actually been putting off this story for a while. This was the byline is December 29th. So there's a new kid on the block, which is another one of these great achievements of mankind type of things. The Webb telescope is not really a follow-on to Hubble. I mean, in the direct sense, because Hubble is a visual light telescope.
Yes.
Now, the James Webb Telescope actually works in infrared. Now, infrared, if something is heated up, a lot of unless you heat it to the point of glowing, the heat that comes off of it in the form of infrared. It's very long wavelength light. And since the universe is expanding and everything is essentially moving away from everything else, the light from very, very old things is not just very far away, but the light what happens is something called the Doppler shift, and it stretches the wavelengths of light out, making them longer, in a sense making them redder. So as you get further and further back in time, closer to that 13.8 billion years in the past, the light that was visual light is now in the infrared. So to see these incredibly distant objects, you need a tool like the James Webb Space Telescope.
An awesome tool.
And there really are two different kinds of scientists when it comes to things like physics, or anything even closely like physics. There's the people who do the theoretical work, who are brilliant people. And then there's a different but similarly brilliant group of people who are the people who make the experiments.
Yep.
The crazy minds of the people who take these insane concepts and turn them into insane realities is fantastic to me. So the Large Hadron Collider is one of the greatest things that humankind has ever built.
Absolutely.
And this is another thing on that scale. It
Yeah,
may
it
not
really
be
is.
kilometers wide, but in terms of the amount of money and time and ingenuity and effort that's gone into building this is a human achievement on par with the pyramids or the Large Hadron Collider. I'm not overselling this.
No, not at all.
I promise you. This is a big, big deal. And as most big deals go that are on the complete fringe of what's technically possible, it has a lot of cost overruns. I forget what the original number was for how much this was going to cost.
For
I
something?
think they said it was going to be $1 billion. It's about $1 billion. Lies. It was lies. Because this
Full
whole
of shit,
thing,
Liz.
this whole thing is full of new technology.
Yeah, full of shit. That he was.
And the main thing that that's really difficult is because heat creates infrared, and you want to see infrared light, you need to keep this thing incredibly cold.
Yeah.
All of the business end of this mirror that you see here is actually kept at, what is it, minus 397 degrees Fahrenheit? Some ridiculously low temperature here. Let me see. I have actually read all of this,
223 degrees Celsius.
Yeah,
370.
Minus 370. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
has to be the telescope has to be constantly shaded, and this is a NASA project with some contributions from, I think we Canadian scientists developed the sensors, and some British guy like knitted a flag or something.
Oh, it actually is going to be kept at minus 433, which will allow it to access even longer infrared wavelengths too.
Right, because otherwise, just the radiation from the
Exactly.
warmth of the materials will
Yeah.
interfere with the imaging. So you have to keep this thing brutally cold.
This
And
is
one
this
of-
this is the
Sorry.
kind of this is. I just wanted to interject one thing on the thing about being cold. This has to be this cold because the delta, the change in temperature that it has to record from this faint bit of radiation that is coming to it from 13 billion light years. 13 billion light years. That's far away. That's really far away. Not much energy makes it over that distance. That's the kind of thing. That is such an infinitesimally small amount of radiation.
Mm-hmm.
It's the number is actually meaningless to us in terms of size. It's just barely existing, and that's why it has to be kept such low temperature. Is that not right, Harry?
That is why it has to be kept at such low temperatures. It's not a superconductivity thing. It's just to keep the
No.
interference
No,
away.
not at all.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, not
exactly.
to mention the way these things work is you gather in photons, and these photons are from very far away. They're incredibly faint, and the photons are focused onto a CCD imager, similar to what's in your cell phone. That's the same kind of technology. However, there's a big difference. The temperature of the CCD imager is incredibly important because you're looking at literally counting, in some cases, individual photons that go into some of these cavities on this incredibly expensive sensor. And they have to keep it very, very, very cold because otherwise what will happen is something called dark current will essentially cause electrical noise. You can see that on your own camera phone. If your camera, if you're in low light and you're taking a bunch of photos and your phone starts heating up, as cell phones often do, you'll notice that the pictures will start to get a lot of pixels that are yellow and green and red, or red, green, and blue, that just sort of show up in various parts of the image. And that's because the sensor's getting warm, and it's essentially producing false alarms to photons that didn't really hit the sensor cells. So you want this, for a whole variety of reasons, to be there. So they're placing this thing out in the atmosphere. The way they're positioning this is actually, I think, as cool as the telescope itself. So there are these things called Lagrange points. And what a Lagrange point is a place where something basically isn't inclined to move in any particular direction because of gravity. Now,
It's like you have two bodies orbiting around each other, right?
Right. So you can see there's a series of things labeled L1, L5, L4, L3. So this is what's called the three-body problem. Now, for any given three bodies, if you have two fairly large ones and one that's really very small compared to the other two, you can define these points where it will be relatively stable, and you won't have to use a lot of fuel to stay in that location. So in this case, the one labeled L2 is where the Webb telescope is going to go. Now, you may say to yourself, the Earth is rotating around the sun, and things that are in closer rotate faster. So, Harry, how is it possible that this thing at L2 doesn't get left behind as the Earth proceeds around the sun? Well, the magic of the Lagrange point L2 is that the gravity from the Earth is just enough as the Earth gets out in front of it that it pulls the thing up along with it and gives it just a little bit of acceleration. So what's happening is essentially, even though the L2 point is further out in a larger orbit from the sun than the Earth is, it goes faster than it would normally because the Earth is essentially tugging the thing along with its gravity.
Right.
And so by putting this thing at the L2 Lagrange point, you get a couple different fun things that happen. First of all, you're essentially shadowed between the Earth and the sun. So that's awesome, since you're trying to keep things cold. Then you actually take this huge heat shield that they put up and face, that's behind you. You put your back to the Earth, and then the Webb telescope can then look out at anything else that's not basically in the direction behind it to the Earth or the sun. And we're going to be able to survey things out in the universe that Hubble could never see because the light from them has receded off into the infrared.
Some
this
things
is going
we
to
would
open
never
up,
even imagine. Yeah.
Well, this is going to open up all of that amazing stuff in visual wavelengths that we just can't see anymore with something like the Hubble. So this isn't so much a replacement for the Hubble as a huge complement to it. And there are also telescopes that measure things in the ultraviolet and in the X-ray. And those are used for different purposes, but you need multiple instruments working at different wavelengths. You can't just put multiple CCD imagers for different frequencies because that mirror is actually, for the Webb, is designed for infrared. I know I'm talking a lot. Does anybody curious about any of this? Or have any
Aliens.
comments? Yeah.
It potentially could, because if you think about Earth as a semi-advanced civilization, we give off more radiation than a planet of our type would give off. So yes, potentially, Serenity, if we saw a planet that was similar to ours, but now that we can see it through the infrared spectrums and measure these wavelengths, we'd be able to tell, hey, there might be life on that planet akin to ours. Maybe not an advanced civilization, maybe just, animal life or abundant plant life or something, but that's more than we've been able to record to date.
Well, okay, so I know it's infrared and all that kind of stuff, but we talked about it, I don't know if it was last weekend or the weekend before, about the octopus things supposedly living on that
Europa.
one moon. Yeah, Europa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that too cold for it to see?
No.
Considering it's ice?
No, you could look at Europa in the infrared.
Well,
I don't think it would be terribly useful. Mostly, this is for things that are very, very, very far away.
Well,
This isn't really designed to work for things that are close by. Radio telescopes and optical would probably be the better tools for looking for extraterrestrial life, especially radio telescopes.
So what you're telling me is it's going to see Hastor. That's what it's going to see.
Well,
Okay.
it will see a lot of things that don't exist anymore.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No,
we'll see the light from things that
Exactly.
almost most of which don't exist.
And
at
we'll
least
be
in
able
the
to
current
track
form.
their patterns, so we'll better be able to see distortions in space-time, in sort of a glimpse of the past of where certain patterns of energy may have traveled due to, say, a supernova. We'd be able to say, oh, it came from roughly about this location because the energy dispersal from 2 billion years ago was thusly. I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Well, it's because I remember one of the cool things I saw recently was that the Hubble telescope, I know it's a different telescope, but saw like a star go supernova, and they actually showed it through the timeline of it going through supernova.
Mm-hmm.
And it was took years, the picture started in 2017.
But the Webb would be able to tell you with that, way back when, since it's exploded, where it was, what it might have, the size, etc. Just by measuring the incoming.
So what is this thing's ideal distance then to look at stuff, since it's not meant to look at? Because I know in the grand scheme of things, Europa is close. To me, it's still far. But in the grand scheme of things, it's close. What is its ideal distance supposed to be?
Give me a second here. Let me try to explain this in a way that makes sense. So, we have visible telescopes, which do sort of what you expect, the same kind of thing Galileo did, but just better.
Yeah.
Right. So we can see things in the same way that we see them with our naked eye. We can funnel photons into our eye. Then we have radio telescopes, which deal with very, very, very short, very, very long wavelengths. Those we can use. We can actually see the microwave background radiation, because essentially, if you look at the electromagnetic spectrum, and I'm sorry, I should have actually had that queued up and ready to go, but I don't want to crash everything trying to improvise. You essentially have long radio waves, then you have shorter and shorter radio waves until you get to the ones that we consider microwaves.
Mm-hmm.
So microwaves, they get shorter and shorter. You get infrared, and then you get visible light. So the infrared basically fills that gap between the microwaves and the visible light. Microwaves can see all the way back to the Big Bang, essentially. They can see the explosion from the Big Bang. But if you want to get detail of any kind, you need something that functions a little more like an optical telescope, but at longer wavelengths than an optical telescope. You can't really resolve fine structure in radio all that easily. You get this big map of what the whole background of the universe looks like, and it's pretty coarse because you're dealing with very, very long wavelengths. So something that sits between those will give us images that look like what we got from Hubble, just much further back in time.
Okay.
And it fills in that gap between that wall of radio noise and where Hubble basically stops being able to resolve things.
God.
So that period of a couple billion years between the background and the end of the visible light stuff. So we're going to be able to see very ancient galaxies, very, very ancient quasi-stellar objects. we're going to know a lot more about these things than we ever did before, because
So
we
it'll-
only have a rough idea from the radio stuff.
So
That's
in a
why
weird
it's
way,
worth
it's a
the
time
$10.
machine.
In a weird
Yes.
way, it's
No,
a time
it-
machine.
a time camera.
Cool.
Yes, time camera.
I wonder if
Yeah,
it's, like,
that's
bigger
what's
on
cool about
inside
the
than-
infrared. Hopefully, I did kind of half-ass the Doppler shift thing, but I mean, if you imagine light as a wave as things move apart, I mean, does everybody you've all experienced the thing where you're standing still and a fire truck drives by, right?
Oh yeah.
And as the
Yeah, of
fire
course.
truck's approaching, it sounds like it's a higher pitch, and then it's the normal sound as it passes you, and then it goes. You know,
The,
gets-
Yeah,
the,
your
the,
Doppler
the,
effect.
the classic the classic is the European ambulance. It goes.
Yeah.
That's Doppler.
But the same thing happens with light. Light
Yes,
is just
exactly.
another type of wave, and so as the waves stretch out, the wavelengths get longer, and things become redder and redder and redder. And Hubble just can't resolve that kind of stuff, and it's
Yeah.
a lot more than just sending it a new pair of glasses.
I mean, it'd be
Because
nice if that's all you had
infrared
to do.
won't even go through the lenses on Hubble, and it won't reflect properly off of its reflectors. I mean, none of it's designed for this. This has to be built for this job.
Yeah.
And that's what the Webb telescope is going to do. It's going to tell us all kinds of cool stuff about things that we know a little bit about, but not a whole lot. So the next
there is
20
one-
years is going to be a great time to be alive if you care about space.
Absolutely. And there's one mundane thing about putting the web where they're putting it, and it's going to make it easy to communicate with it. When you have a telescope that's like in orbit around the sun, for example, or in orbit, is New Horizons is heading out of the solar system, this thing is going to have the same relative position to Earth all the time. So they will have what they describe as continuous communications through what they call the deep space network. And they said this is a quote from this article, during routine operations, we will uplink command sequences and downlink data up to twice per day through the deep space network. The observatory can perform a sequence of commands, pointing and observations autonomously. And typically they will upload a week's worth of commands at a time and make the updates daily as needed. That's a lot more efficient probably than any other space telescope that has ever existed.
And
here's
just
the relative distances. Sorry, but just so you can see, Hubble is basically just hanging out a little further away than the International Space Station, but not much. I mean, it's not really all that interesting, but it has to deal with all the crap of being close to Earth.
Yes.
Webb is out here where it's nice and cool, and there's really not much to bother it, and we're basically sitting between it and the sun, so that's going to protect it a little bit, hopefully. Yeah, it's going to be great.
it's one of those things, like I looked it up because I was curious. The poor little Hubble telescope is 30 years old.
Yeah.
Over 30 almost on April 24th.
But she's still doing work. She's still bringing back beautiful pictures.
She's being a good girl, but that poor
Workhorse.
thing, she's been getting hit by I don't know how much stuff out there, just debris.
Yeah, that's one topic I want to bring up in future is the
Space shit.
refuse pile that's building up around Earth and could be a big problem fairly soon.
Hubble's
Mhm.
outside most of that, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That poor thing. I didn't want to think about her getting hit every 5
Like
seconds.
400 miles or something.
But yeah, no.
Did you folks get a chance to look at the Quillette thing that I linked? The Science Goes Rogue?
I did not look at that, but let me take a quick look at it. I'm a fast reader.
Yeah.
Speed
This
reader.
is interesting, not so much because of what's in
Oh.
it, because Quillette posts all sorts of things that are
Oh.
controversial all the time. It is a heterodox journal, but the main thing is the person who wrote this, which is Lawrence M. Krauss, who is one of the more famous scientists in the world.
Yep.
And he's like a big deal. He got Me Too'd not too long ago and managed to sort of survive it, which should give you an idea of how much juice the guy has to get Me Too'd and not just get immediately canceled. Because that's a real problem. So he wrote this article in Quillette, which I think is actually pretty darn well written. I would like to have us read a little bit from this. Does somebody want to do this, or do you want to hear my squeaky voice?
I'll read it.
So you have the article itself, right? Why don't you
yeah,
can read from
I'm
yours
looking at
rather
the
than me
article right
scrolling.
now. Yeah, I'm just going to read it.
Yeah, read the parts that you think are important.
Sure. Science Goes Rogue, and it's written by Larry Krauss. And he says social justice activists have been arguing for some time that scientific societies and institutions need to address systemic sexism and racism in STEM disciplines. However, the rationale is often anything but scientific. For example, whenever percentages in faculty positions, test scores, or grant recipients in various disciplines do not match percentage of national average population, racism or sexism is generally said to be the cause. That in spite of, hold on, control this a little bit here. This is in spite of the fact that there are no explicit examples of racism or sexism generally that can accompany the statistics. Correlation, after all, is not causation. Without some underlying mechanism or independent evidence to explain a correlation of observed outcomes with population statistics, inferring racism or sexism in academia as the cause is inappropriate. One might have hoped for more rigor from the leadership of scientific societies and research institutions. Alas, this has not been the case. In the current climate, many have simply adopted popular rhetoric, and the jargon of critical theory has begun to dominate communications by these institutions. Pandering and virtue signaling have begun to generate proactive initiatives by the highest levels of the scientific community, often replacing the focus on science itself. Here are a few examples from the past few weeks alone. This is the good part of the audience of the article. Everybody pay attention. In December, the American Physical Society, the largest society of physicists in the world, sent out a letter to its membership arguing that Trump's presidential executive order 13950 on combating race and sex stereotyping was, quote, in direct opposition to the core values of the American Physical Society. The, end quote, the order therefore needed to be rescinded in order to, quote, strengthen American scientific enterprise, end quote. The order since rescinded by Biden quoted Martin Luther King, stating that in government-supported scientific institutions, people should not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. It argued that materials from places like Argonne national laboratories that equate colorblindness and meritocracy with actions of bias, or from Sandia national laboratories which state that an emphasis on rationality over emotionality is a characteristic of, quote, white males, end quote, were inappropriate training materials for government-supported science institutions. It concluded that it shall be the policy of the United States not to promote race or sex stereotyping or scapegoating in the federal workforce. It is difficult to see how reducing the intrusion of racially targeted politics might threaten America's scientific enterprise, but the APS did not stop there. One might imagine that access to services or proximity to major research facilities would be the overriding factors of concern when determining the locations for its major annual meetings. However, this week it was announced that the Society will examine the demographic information associated with police behavior and the use of force in cities considered. No criteria have been provided according to which these statistics will be scientifically evaluated. Poor areas afflicted by high crime may see racial minorities disproportionately reflected in arrest statistics. Will they now be disqualified, even though those very areas might benefit from the economic influx associated with huge scientific meetings? Possible evidence of systemic racism in police conduct, as opposed to the existence of isolated racist police officers, remains hotly debated, with different studies reaching divergent conclusions. Nevertheless, the APS appears to have embraced the ad hoc assumption that a police force may be deemed racist if its arrest rate or use of deadly force does not mimic population percentages for different racial groups. Scientific societies like the APS are, for practical purposes, often managed by functionaries rather than scientists, so perhaps this kind of development is not all that surprising. More surprising, however, was a statement from Francis Collins, director of NIH, the largest single agency supporting scientific research in the country. He apologized for existing structural racism in biomedical research and pledged to address the problem with sweeping changes. He did this at the behest of the advisory committee to the director working group report that called on the NIH to acknowledge the prevalence of racism and anti-Blackness in the scientific workforce. And what evidence is provided of this alleged racism and anti-Blackness? In 2011, a study found that Black investigators had research funding rates 11% lower than white researchers, although by 2020, the success rate of Black investigators had doubled to 24% compared with 31% for white investigators. Disparity in outcomes are, however, not themselves evidence of racism within the NIH. There's no evidence that the grant committees adjudicating these applications judged the proposals on anything but merit. Equality of opportunity is necessary to counter racism. While such equality did not exist in the past, recent gains suggest that the situation has changed. Assertions of structural racism and anti-Blackness within the NIH community today are unwarranted based on this data alone. For the NIH leadership to take actions based on this unscientific conclusion is even more inappropriate. That kind of gives you a general feel for Larry's point of view. He's taking a very rationalist approach, saying that just stating that the structural racism exists doesn't mean it exists, and saying that, well, we have these figures showing that there's a disproportionate lack of Black electrical engineers doing this kind of work doesn't mean that the reason for that was that Blacks were discriminated in getting into electrical engineering courses of study. Quite the contrary. A Black guy who comes out of high school, and knows calculus stone cold and is starting on differential equations is going to be the hottest property you could possibly. He's going to be white hot, so to speak, and he's going to be courted by the top institutions in the country. Caltech will fight Harvard for those guys.
Yeah, you will not need the Webb telescope to see him.
Yeah, exactly.
He will be emitting light in the visible spectrum.
You're not wrong.
I need to give you guys some context here. Francis Collins is an older gentleman. He's a Christian who was involved with the Human Genome Project. A very principled man. I don't think most people have bad things to say about him, and he seems to be pretty good about keeping his faith and his science segregated so that he can do both of them at a high level. Okay, he's a very well-respected man, but he's also very close to retirement. And I know he wants to do the right thing. We've seen a lot of religious people get swept up in this SJW nonsense, and critical race theory. So I'm saddened to see him not cut quite as badly as he is.
His better years are behind him, Harry.
His better years are behind him, and I think he just wants to finish without leaving in scandal at the end of his career.
Yeah, I feel the same disappointment you do, by the way. I know.
Yeah, that's the thing. No, but Lawrence Krauss is a full-on Trump derangement syndrome lefty guy.
Yes.
He's a radical atheist, an evangelical atheist. I know that's everybody's favorite type of my religious friends. So he's an evangelical atheist. He can be kind of a jerk. He, like I said, full-on Trump derangement. So for him to break with the crowd in this article, and it's a long article. I'm going to post the link to it in the show notes, and I am actually going to do what I said I was going to do and post all of the science stuff in the show notes this next time, because I suck. And now that I've organized these things in a nice spreadsheet, it's less of an issue. But yeah, this is a big deal, and this really bothers me. I mean, there's a bunch of other examples here. Canadian academic initiative called Decolonizing Light, and sponsored by the New Frontiers and Research Fund.
God, that sounds like a cult.
It does, doesn't it? Studying the reproduction of colonialism in and through physics, and examining how colonial scientific knowledge authority was and is still reproduced in the context of light. The description of the program on their website is as muddled as one might imagine. Physics is considered as hard and objective science, disconnected from social life and geopolitical history. This narrative both constitutes and reproduces inequality. Oh, and then
Facts
they
are
talk about-
racist.
And
The Socratic method is racist.
What does
Here's-
physics have to do with colonialism? It's
It,
separate.
it does. It's the scientific method is bad, and Scientific American, which I regret, I let automatically renew. I'm so pissed at myself
Yeah,
that they got
I
more.
cut
of my
mine
money.
off. Yep.
Because screw those people. Okay, this week, Scientific American, once a rigorous scientific publication, published an opinion column by several young scientists known for their campaign to call a scientific strike against racism following the death of George Floyd. The authors advocate changing the name of the James Webb Space Telescope because Webb, a former NASA administrator, was administrator when the federal government did not adequately respect LGBTQ rights.
Oh, fuck off.
Let that marinate in your noggin.
You know,
Tell me
George
they-
Floyd was our most promising astrophysicist, and his life was cut short.
Yeah,
He
did
was
they
good at
want to
being
change
high.
it? Did they want to change it to the George Floyd telescope?
No. Here's what they Webb is not incriminated as a racist or bigot, but as a servant of bigots. So who do the authors suggest that the telescope be named for? If encouraging diversity is the issue, perhaps it should be named the Vera Rubin Space Telescope after the deceased astronomer who in the 1960s and 70s provided some of the first compelling evidence of dark matter in our galaxy. Or perhaps the Jocelyn Bell Burnell Space Telescope after the astrophysicist who, as
Still
a
too
graduate
racist.
student, helped discover the first pulsars in 1967, which also will be fun to look at with the Webb telescope, and who some claim was overlooked for the Nobel Prize was awarded to her supervisor. Instead, the proposal is to rename the telescope the Harriet Tubman Space Telescope.
No.
Fair?
No.
Yes.
No, don't
Yes.
let that be true.
No, that's what the proposal was.
Don't
The
let
Harriet
this be my
Tubman
world.
Space
Gross.
Telescope.
Oh, God. This is just...
Death, sweet death, take me.
Yeah. I'm not
They've
really
lost
sure.
their collective minds.
I'm a big Harriet Tubman fan. Don't get me wrong.
Big ups to Harriet. Yeah.
Word up.
She can strike out the best of batters.
Okay, so during which she likely used the North Star to navigate to freedom. So that's their justification for calling it that. Why don't they? Why don't they open up a new?
They could rename the
center.
Hubble. They could rename the Hubble and call it the Hub Tub.
The sad part is, this could be a Babylon
Hubble.
B article.
Almost could. Call it the George Floyd I'm higher than you are telescope. Jesus.
And we skipped a California initiative entitled "A Pathway to Equitable Math Instruction," funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Assessment of grades probably incandescent right now. Let me check to see what
I read
saying.
I read the
Jack Hunt's
executive summary and a lot of that math initiative from on the Gates Foundation site. I spent like an hour reading that stuff. It's just horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying, and it's such a waste of money, and it's basically money, a big transfer payment to a bunch of race grifters. I'm not playing. That's all that's
you're
going on
entirely
here.
Right. Yeah.
Various teaching methods are presented as characteristic of white supremacy, including an emphasis on getting the right answer, a requirement that students show their work, and adherence to state standards.
Right.
Now, I'm actually less of a fan of the state standards, to be honest. And
That's
I don't
that's
know.
not what we're talking about, though. We're talking about the intrinsic value of any answer brought to you by a student of color.
Well,
Really?
Yes. No. This
Any
is
answer.
dumb. This is dumb.
2 + 2
Anybody who
equals
believes
7.
This is dumb. Okay, hold on. I actually know a not insignificant amount about the history of mathematics, and the history of mathematics is, if told in an unbiased way, extremely diverse. there are great mathematicians from all over this planet.
Yes.
And there have been incredible contributions, early contributions made by the Egyptians, by the Indians, and by the Arabs. It is not a white men only club at all. Now, a lot of the greatest work that was done, a lot of great German mathematicians.
Yep.
You know, the Germans and a handful of English and a few other people did
Some
do a lot of fantastic
Ashkenazi
stuff.
Jews. A lot of Ashkenazi Jews.
And some Ashkenazi Jews. I sound like the whitest person. Ashkenazi.
Yeah, I'm from Ohio.
Yeah. You don't need to do anything to mathematics to make it inclusive other than just tell people about what actually happened.
Yep.
And I hear about this stuff all the time about they want to, this isn't in this article, but they want to get away from calling things by the theorems of the white men who came up with them.
Well, yeah.
And I remember as a kid when I was thinking about what should I study in school, and I was thinking, you know, someday I'm going to be dead, and it might be nice for there to be something of me left behind. You know, just a contribution that people would point a finger at. And I thought, well, you know, you could write a book and it would end up in the Library of Congress. You could do things, but if you got, you know, if I ever came up with like a theorem, you know, if I came up with a theorem and my name was attached to it, people for thousands or tens of thousands of years would still know that, you know, there was this guy named Harry who existed. You know, and you want to take that away from people? Maybe it's a little obscure and probably far too personal.
Harry's last
throw
theorem.
this out. But to my mind, it's an honor that you earn, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, to have a theorem like that named after you.
Yeah.
It's a testament that lives on past the person.
Well, but if we can just, if history is what we agree history is, why can't we say that there was a country called Wakanda where they was kings and Pythagoras was a black man who, you know, and that was where he made his discoveries. Why can't we do that? What's the harm in doing that? Seriously.
We start small. We start small by saying that when somebody decides to live their life a different way as a different gender, totally fine.
No.
I'm fine with that, but I'm not fine with the idea that I have to pretend that the past didn't happen the way it did. Bruce Jenner won an Olympic medal as a dude.
You
and then
weren't
killed
there.
someone
You
with
don't.
his car.
You weren't there. You don't know if he was a dude or not. He may have always been a genetic, biological female, which he is now. She is now. Sorry,
Stunning and brave.
Her.
Yeah,
Stunning
I mean,
and brave.
if you want to be referred to in a particular way moving forward from the point where you decide to change your life, fine. I'm not a dick. I'll call you whatever you want to be called.
But no, but you have to say.
But I will not pretend.
That person,
unless you're a child,
that person now has XX chromosomes, and you have to say that, even though when you look at them, those XX chromosomes happen to be in the shape of an XY. You understand? Do you understand what
sure.
the state expects of you?
Well, you know, it's just the rewriting of history. But once we start rewriting history, where do we stop?
You never stop.
Wouldn't it be better if history was more inclusive? So this is the whole thing with black Britons from 600-700 years ago, when the BBC was showing images from, you know, Britain's history. It's like that doesn't look like somebody from that period of time in Britain. Oh, but they might have brought some Africans with them who were conscripted into the Roman army. They could have potentially been stationed when the Romans were occupying. Therefore, you know, since there were like 5 brothers in England, then therefore historically English people were black.
Well, that proves it. Yeah, that proves it right there, because narrative.
That makes almost as much. Anyway,
I know.
Just nuts.
It's infuriating.
So what about the other than Skep and me? Does anybody else have a thought about this other than it's just
I need to shut up. I'm sorry.
No, you're doing me a favor. You know, we have plenty of time to talk about this.
Well, it's weird because it's one of those things that, on the kind of side note of Wakanda, some manga actually made fun of the whole Wakanda thing and put it in there, and they they drew the main character from Wakanda, basically dark-skinned white person, and still said it was Wakanda, but it was WAHKN, whatever. So
Very clever.
yeah, no, it was funny as hell. But anyway, but it's like there's so much weird. It feels like we're going back in time a little bit because there's the whole segregation stuff. There's this kind of shit. There's shows where it's like, we're going to have a black character as this main character, but technically through some weird happenstance, they actually would have owned slaves because that's the only way they could have made money. So you have a black person owning slaves in the of representation. And it's like, why don't we just take color, gender, religion, age, all that shit out of it? Just person be person.
Yeah. Native Americans had slaves too. Just saying.
Oh, I know. I'm true.
That isn't true.
But
That's
we
not allowed
learned
to
it
be
watching The White Man.
Oh no, it's
not allowed to be true.
Oh,
Well, if you think about it, it's a big upgrade from just being killed.
yeah,
You know,
true.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not that I'm like pro-slavery or anything, but I mean, if we're trying to look
Yes,
at
you are.
if we're trying to look at history as it was at the time, as opposed to through our 2021 rose-colored glasses,
They were
slavery
rescuing
was a real thing.
No, they
Yes.
were rescuing black people from the white people. That's what they were doing.
They had white
They weren't
slaves.
holding slaves. They were helping them.
No, they had
What?
white people as slaves.
Well,
Yeah.
they
And other Native Americans.
they were rescuing them too.
Well, it's
Anyway.
one of those things that like there's a lot of weird dilution that's going on in the like it's so okay. So one of my things that I have a kind of an issue with that I think is also kind of funny is the fact that you have so many people wearing kente cloth, but kente cloth comes from this very specific one part of Africa, and Africa is ginormous. And you have all these people who don't know what tribe they come from wearing kente cloth when they could be from a tribe that tried to
Oh.
wipe those people out.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's
And-
absolutely right.
And that's my problem is that you have a group of people right now who are, because you can see, and I'm not trying to sound racist when I say this, but you can see the dilution happening because a lot of black people are not as dark as they used to be, and they're slowly going the middle path where everybody's kind of going toward that more in between. I don't want to use the term mulatto, but you know what I'm talking about. That
Mocha.
skin. Yeah.
I've seen some of the Brazilian artwork.
Yeah.
In Brazil, it's a point of pride.
Oh yeah.
It's because it's this whole thing about the melting pot, and they're very, I don't know how to say it. I want to say this in a way that sounds really positive, but they
Inclusive?
look at their history and they accept the bad things that happened with slavery and all the things that happened. And
Like you
they're
should.
very proud of what they've become.
Yeah.
You know, with the mixing of a lot of the different racial components and you know there are pictures showing, you know, very dark African slaves and then having kids and telling the story of how now they're sort of milk chocolatey.
Yeah, and the thing is that it feels like it's a desperation of people who tie way too much to their skin color or their gender or their religion or whatever, trying to grasp onto it, because the people I see talking like this who are African American are always the lightest ones. The darker skinned ones are always just like, I don't fucking care. But like, they're always the ones who could pass for white. Like in the same vein, you have, and I'm going to tie this back around,
No,
Meghan
no.
Markle.
Sean
Meghan-
King is a fine example of a Nubian brother, okay?
Oh yeah, but you have Meghan Markle, who, if you just put a picture of her up, if nobody knew who she was, she looks like a damn white girl. Like, she can talk shit all she wants. She's full of crap. But it's one of those. It's like you have, and it feels like it's the need to belong to something, but still make yourself different. And that's what a lot of this feels like. Is this? I have to be different, but I still want to be part of a crowd. And most kids, at least in my generation and stuff, went for like scene or goth or mod or whatever.
People
And-
want to be special. They don't want
Yeah.
to work hard to
And
do
Demi
the thing.
Vaporwave.
They don't
Yeah.
want. They don't want to do the 10,000 hours of hard work, of excruciating, hard, painful work that it takes to be special at one little thing. And here's a freebie. Here's one that's just lying on the ground for you. All you have to do is be black. And
Yeah.
so that's the attraction of people like Talcum X.
Yeah.
That's why he does what he does. Is how he would not be special in any other way. You have a defective little tiny mind and giant insecurities he wears on his sleeve. He's perfect for the movement and absolutely unsuited to do anything, including pass on his genes.
What's like Tariq Nasheed's the same way. Like,
Yeah.
he's
yeah.
worthless. Except as a, air quotes, provocateur, air quotes, political commentator.
Yeah.
It's always there. That's all he's good for. And same thing with Talcum X, so many of them. And it's, and the same can be said for Candace Owens. Because we all know what she is.
Yeah, it's social autopsy. But, I haven't forgotten about social autopsy.
By the way,
Candace,
that website is still active, and you can log on and use it. And the first thing it does, it says you have to go to something called the Chrome Store, which is their application. It's not anything having to do with Google Chrome, but they call it dishonestly the Chrome Store. It's so sketchy, I can't believe it. And that's her site.
Mm-hmm.
Which was funded by a bunch of conservatives. That's the worst part.
Yeah, yes.
Well, I mean, it's one of the, she's a grifter, and grifters are, if they make it to where she's made it, they're damn good at what they do.
Yeah.
But it's one of those
neither
things.
side is without sin here. But
I know, but it's just
Oh no, it's still funny. Don't get me wrong, it's still funny. But it's like you're starting to see this with the Native American community. I have kind of a connection to it because I'm within the range of blood that it needs to be considered part of the tribe, but we never joined in my family because my great grandfather saw it as a crutch that he didn't want to be part of, and not in a racist sense, but he didn't want to live on the reservation because he saw it was stupid. But you're starting to see it with the Native American community because you have a lot of them claiming shit that they have no idea what they're talking about. Like they'll claim that America broke treaties, which we did with them, but it was only specific tribes and they're not even part of that tribe. Or they live on reservation and get welfare, and then they want to try to act like the government still owes them something. And it's like everybody wants to be oppressed without actually being oppressed.
All right, I'm going to make one comment, and then we're going to tuck this topic in for now, because this war is not over, not by a long shot. Again, we'll be coming back to this, but when you talk about Candace Owens, there's a class of people who are just kind of, I don't know, it's like whether it's pathological cunning or just a potent cocktail of the two. And you think of somebody like Candace Owens, but on a bigger scale. I assume you guys know about what's her name? Elizabeth Holmes, the founder of Theranos.
Theranos, yeah.
Theranos. That is, you see her with that blonde hair, wearing her Steve Jobs turtleneck. I mean, she figured out exactly what people wanted to hear, and she gave it to them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
that's all. She was very cunning, and it all works beautifully until at some point the people with the money say, "You are actually going to deliver something, right?"
She's crazy. I believe she's actually delusional, Harry.
I think she's broken herself with the amount of. I think she wrote so many checks that were lies, and I think that under the pressure of all the lies that she spun, that she cracked. I think she was a grifter to start out with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and something. Yeah, I agree with you. I think something sent her around the bend. I really think she has had a literal schizophrenic break with reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not that I have anything against Candace Owens other than the fact that she's a grifter. The point being that when I think about Candace Owens, my thoughts almost immediately go to Elizabeth Holmes. Because here's the Candace Owens thing, but a way more interesting story.
Yeah,
and way more interesting because of the people that were involved
and who got hoodwinked.
And the people who got hoodwinked. I mean, these are some big names of
sophisticated people, really
very sophisticated people and good people.
Yes,
and not like the sarcastic top people that we talk about when we don't really mean top people.
No, these are actual top people.
Top people got hoodwinked by her because she knew she gave them what they wanted to hear.
Well,
in
it
a
also helps
package
she's
that
pretty.
they liked.
It
Well,
helps
I
that
mean,
she's pretty, too.
She's pretty, but not the kind of aggressive sort
Yeah,
of
it's not
fake
the-
trophy wife kind of pretty.
It's not the
She's like-
dangerous pretty. It's not that.
She's
It's
like, she's like the smart girl who's pretty but doesn't
Yeah.
quite know she's pretty. That was sort of the thing she was trying to,
Yeah. oh no, agree.
not-
I've seen that before.
yeah. I got to admit, her con probably would have worked on me. Just saying.
I mean, that's the thing is like she is that type of pretty that if you haven't run into that type of person before, whether they be male or female, if you haven't run into that type of person before, it's really hard.
I'll
no,
tell
until you get hit by the truck.
26-year-old Harry would have been destroyed by this one.
Yeah,
I can just tell you.
that's the thing. 26-year-old Harry might have been, but 46-year-old Harry is another story.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Because by then, and let me tell you, and Harry, I think will probably back me up on this. The information technologies industry is filled with people like that who want to be entrepreneurs, who have much less going in their business plan than what they try and sell you. And a number of them are pretty girls or have pretty girls involved with them. And the Tinder trap is it's overdone, frankly.
Well, I mean,
Well,
it's
this
kind
is
of like
another one of those things that you and I should talk about if we ever do our tech talk with Skep.
Yes, that would be fun.
But sorry, Serenity, go ahead and finish up, and then we'll talk about the fun article we have that Sora brought us. But
it's kind of in the same realm as the pharmaceutical company sending former cheerleaders.
Yeah,
it's kind of down that you
Sandoz, the famous Sandoz story. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it is. It's like they need to be just attractive enough to make the person they're talking to uncomfortable, but not
I've
so
seen that
they're like
dynamic.
out of the. Yeah, so it's one of those things, and that's what she is. She's got and there's a lot of them that are like this. They have just enough class, air quotes, and just attractive enough, and can fake smart enough that it makes you just a little bit uncomfortable, so you want to get to that point but not so uncomfortable you're automatically on the defensive, and that's a bitch to do.
she's a little more than that. I think you're selling her short.
I know
she is the queen. She is the goat when we're talking about this category. She's Candace Owens is just a pretender to the throne. She's the goat.
It's the greatest of all time.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Sora, are you ready?
Hit me.
Okay.
All right, drop candle. Let's do this.
So-
Beat some people.
Tell me about the youngins and their texting.
So this particular thing happened last year, so it's older, but it was recently brought to my attention. They started talking about it at local radio a week or so ago. So apparently, young people. So we're thinking Gen Zers, which are the teens and early 20s that are hanging around right now. That full stops. So like proper punctuation is intimidating. Because it's a sign of anger, passive aggressiveness, etc., etc. So if you think about adding just a full thing, and in fact, some linguists are saying that now such punctuation in short devices like text messaging, IMs, etc., is no longer necessary. It's redundant. Because the moment you press send, that very act of sending a message acts as its invisible punctuation. So by adding punctuation on top of it, you are having an additional message, adding an additional message to what you're saying. So it's scary.
It hurts me. It burns. It burns.
And I was reading, there's a couple other different articles around this very thing. So this is the fun short one from the Daily Mail, but there was a couple of other newspapers that picked it up and ran with it. And other linguists are saying that, we won't go as far as to say that you no longer have to punctuate email because, context is very important, which is
actually, I think this
interesting
article
to
was
see.
Longer than the other one. Hold on, let me see. So let's see. The debate was reignited after writer Rhiannon Coslet tweeted, "Older people, do you realize that ending a sentence with a full stop comes across as sort of abrupt and unfriendly to younger people in an email/chat? Genuinely curious." Okay.
I do like
He
this.
needs to be smacked.
Peak snowflakery.
Yeah.
I agree.
Agreed.
You know, this is a very interesting change in our language, and I'm going to harp on something that I've harped on before, and this is typical. You know, taking things like periods. You know, the comma has largely disappeared from the written sentence anymore, and people don't even know the rules for commas. They and it's hilarious to watch them try and use semicolons. Prospero, she would back me up here. But it's an interesting thing to hear people talk now, and there is a style of speaking now that is referred to as ghetto, talking ghetto, and the effective vocabulary universe in ghetto is about 1,800 words. It's about 1,800 words. Now, an average someone with a decent high school education in speaking English from the US or Canada or Australia or something like that will use approximately 10,000 words. They will be comfortable using approximately 10,000 words. And that's out of a everyday usage, language usage there are about 100,000 words in the English language. It's more than Italian, which is about 80,000, and more than French, which I think is less than Italian. And these are, by the way, this is not Wikipedia information. This is information from linguistic anthropologists out of American Anthropologist. So you may be able to find different things, different specific numbers. But what I'm getting to is that when they say context is key, they're not kidding. Because in order to express the full range of ideas of everything that you do in your life in 1,800 words, you depend quite a bit on context, on the listener, the person who hears you speak, to understand the context in which you're speaking. So that limited number of grunts and snarls that comprise your language come out in something that they can interpret and act upon and respond to in a way that will facilitate actual exchange of ideas. That's you're not really relying as much on the words of the language to do that as much as a highly normativized, where you expect each other to adhere to certain norms of behavior, what's cool, as it were. And you expect to be able to understand most of the contexts in which someone else will act and react. And it's a very stultified, very normative, actually very conservative style of living. And part of it has to do with part of the prison that these people put themselves in is not learning enough of the language to express themselves and give them the freedom to have the ability to express more complex ideas, or having the desire to do that. And in schools, in minority neighborhoods, they call that thinking white, or acting white, or talking white. And that's a bad thing, to use all those extra words and have nuance and shades of meaning and so forth. And punctuating sentences is frowned on too. So I think this a little bit. I think that's all tied up in a little bit of this.
Mm-hmm. And also the at one point they were saying, I don't recall if someone said this verbatim, but the feeling around it is something to the effect of formal writing, formal speech, whatever is oppressive, or
of course it is.
And maybe not oppressive, not the right word. It's the other one. What did they say? It's when they
colonial or
repressive.
No. What do white people have?
Privilege.
That's the word. Oh my! I'm so sorry. My brain just completely.
No. My brain does it all the time. You're good. You're good.
What's the word?
You might say.
So you're saying it reflects privilege, that kind of communication.
Yeah, so it's by using it is another notch of privilege against other people, because you are able. I don't know where they get that from necessarily. I don't know if this is to say that, okay, you didn't go to a great school that didn't really care. There were so many kids in the class that they didn't have time to properly teach you, or you didn't have parents at home because they were working full time, 3-4 jobs to keep you alive. Whatever it could be, the reasons why that's what it feels like. There's this almost a disdain against this.
No, I agree with you. In fact, really, what's I think happening at these schools is the liberal education board is at work. And so back in the old days, people would say, hey, I'm bad at math. And the teacher would say, okay, we're going to spend extra time with you and get you up to speed in math so you'll be better at math. Now they say, I'm bad at English. I don't read and write well. And they back in the day, they would say, oh, we'll spend extra time with you and get you up to speed and get you where you can read and write and be comfortable and be able to express yourself. Now what they say is, I'm bad at math. Whatever answer you put out is valuable to us because you have value and we want you to feel that value. So don't worry about getting the right answer. Worry about just you being you and understand that we love anything and any foolishness you excrete. We will treat like gold and frankincense and myrrh. And they do the same thing, I believe, in all the subjects now. And that's the cancer that's taking over education.
Well, you were talking about commas, and of course the classic, well, not classic, but modern classic, is the book on grammar, Eats, Shoots, and Leaves.
Oh, I like that one.
Which refers to the old joke. Panda. Hey, you read the joke, Sora. You're better at this than me.
All right. A panda walks into a cafe. He orders a sandwich, eats it, then draws a gun and fires 2 shots in the air. Why? Asks the confused waiter as the panda makes towards the exit. The panda produces a badly punctuated wildlife manual and tosses it over his shoulder. I'm a panda, he says at the door. Look it up. The waiter turns to the relevant entry in the manual and, sure enough, finds an explanation. Panda, large black and white bear-like mammal, native to China, eats, shoots, and leaves.
But the one I grew up with was different. He shot the waiter and left. And then just said, look up panda in the dictionary. He didn't even hand him a pamphlet. Like, that was the one I grew up with.
That's funny. We read that book in high school because there's a joke, an actual joke book. It shoots and leaves. Yeah,
it's great.
Never heard it before.
That's pretty wonderful.
The thing with this stuff is that there is a difference. You've got your your formal writing, whether that be your academic writing, the writing you write at work towards your coworkers and your boss, and then of course you have your everyday writing. But so what that somebody, I don't know, it could just very well be the evolution of writing, but to feel fear over a punctuation mark, that sometimes if you set your phone, will be automatic. Like if you do 2 spaces or something, it becomes the period. You can set things, all sorts of shortcuts up, right? And you're not even paying attention to it.
Yeah.
But
if you're not careful, you can say, I love eating babies and smiling, but I hate punctuation. The old joke.
Yeah.
I love eating, babies, and smiling, but I hate punctuation. But anyway.
Well, it's like there's
important.
There's a whole thing on like TikTok and Instagram right now about women going, I'm writing emails like my male counterparts. And I'm like, what? What the fuck are you talking about? It's like, I'm not using as many exclamation marks and I'm going to write it the same way they do. And it's like,
oh, yes. So that's an excellent point, because I don't know if it was in this one or in another article speaking about this, is they say that to use exclamation points because it's a friendlier punctuation mark. It evokes excitement and happiness.
When I was growing up, that denoted anger, but okay.
Or impatient.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the thing I would think of as far as where you might see a lot of issues with this too is technical papers, like APA format, stuff like that. Because it may not seem like you be using as much of that in some ways, but you're actually using a lot because you're basically having to do a giant research paper covering a topic very thoroughly. So I wonder how this will work out for more tech-based fields as well for people. So,
but
yeah,
but it's one of those things where it's kind of like, because I gave an anecdote before the stream about, like, I have a friend who's my age, so this is an older millennial, who, like, I did a period at the end of the sentence, and she asked me why I was mad at her, and I was like, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Well, now you know.
Yeah, and she explained it. She's like, "I just thought you were mad." I'm like, "Why?" So it's one of those things where it's like, I don't, because for the most part, because I text with my mother and my mother doesn't understand the short words. Like, if you do like, she still doesn't understand what lol means. So I have to type.
Honestly, you guys wouldn't know leet speak if we threw it at you either.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
old generation of internet stuff.
Well, I know some leet because I kind of grew up on the very edge of that, but not very much. But the thing is, like, so I type in full sentences and I do periods and I capitalize the next letter, so this way she understands what I'm saying. So, like, I don't see. So I do that to my friends sometimes, and there's a couple of my friends who don't say anything, and then there was her, and I was just like, it's confusing because it's kind of like it's just proper sentence structure, you lazy bastards. Like, what's the problem?
So, especially now in the world of iPhones or smartphones in general, right? When typing out is so much faster, so much easier. Because, like, yeah, if I think back to my brick phone from high school, sure, of course, I would be using the fewest characters, the most truncated words, anything possible. Because instead of scrolling through, 3 characters to get to the letter you need and all that sort of stuff, right? As fast as I was able to get at some point, it's still so much slower than it is nowadays. So now it's just like, yeah, I can write it out exactly as I want to and be understood better.
Well, it's kind of like people don't understand, like, the younger ones don't understand. And yes, I know we're talking like we're very old, but we're not. But it's kind of like the whole this trend that was a few years ago, people getting mad about people responding with just the letter K. It's like, you don't understand. That comes from the time when you had to cycle through all the letters and K was all you were going to get. Instead of me saying, "All righty, I will be right over." K, that's what you're getting. But that's like, there's always holdovers from other previous generations and stuff like that. But still,
and all the trends and stuff will evolve and whatever. But where I will freaking
die on the hill you will die on.
My spear and die exactly is, I cannot stand coworkers who don't properly send emails. Even patients who send us emails. I'm sorry, I'm not your fucking sibling or your little crony friend. You will write, "This is a doctor's office, ma'am. We say hello, so-and-so, and kind regards, because this is a place of business and health, not your little lunch date. Oh, I can't stand this." And I hate when, like, you have other coworkers who you write a very professional email and stuff because there's a problem, and you send it off, and all you get back is like, "I shit you not. That's interesting. Written HMMMMMMM ... That's interesting ... And that's it. I'm like, I'm sorry, did I fucking send you a text message with this information? This is a place of business. This is your job, woman. So when this article triggered me.
Something Serenity.
You actually can read and write multiple languages too, right? I mean, English isn't even the only one you know.
I wouldn't claim that, but at some point, yes, I was able to.
What were you saying, Functional?
Something you said that kind of like got me thinking that this sort of utilitarian thinking, starting with lead speak, early internet speech, and what's devolving into what we're getting now as sort of behavioral patterns from people, is it seems it's like this utilitarian. Like you said, maybe you had an old style phone and you had to go through. So it was a matter of just getting the message across quickly. To more modern things like what is Twitter, 180 characters or something stupid like that.
240 now, I think.
On your smartphone, it's just like quick, pick it up and text it real quick and then send the message. But it seems to have been the warping effect seems to affect so many more people, and then that's how they conduct themselves normally. Whereas I can safely assume that the people in my presence know and can respect the proper use of the language and grammar.
Well, I
but
feel
we
like
also know that there is a time and place to be like, Harry sends me, can you do this for me? Okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But if Harry were to send me an email because we're doing a project together, and it would be like, like Sora said, yes, hi Harry, how are you? Blah 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 blah. Thank you, sincerely, blah. Done. With punctuation, not like So I was thinking we should maybe do this, and then maybe no, or like it's like verbal diarrhea in text form.
Yeah, no one is saying that if the concern is for people, it's like, oh well, we want to get to the point. I was like, yeah, no one's saying you have to have 10 paragraphs of small chat in your email. Just like say hello, and you don't even have lead hacker. Oh, hacker.
lead hacksaw is technically what it is, but yeah, that's what I say.
Little known fact, Harry actually is Crash Override.
Yeah, there you go. Secret identity.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Line sack. But yeah, no, it's one of those things. It's like, just put dear name, hope you're having a good day or whatever. Da-da-da-da-da. Sincerely, your name, done. And it's like, it's not that. It's like, you're not lollygagging. You're just like, just be a little courteous, but to the point, and a little antiseptic, and just kind of go.
This is not like college or high school where you have to fulfill a word quota.
Well, I do want at least enough word quota so I know what the fuck the problem is, but yes.
So are we ready to call it a night, folks?
Sounds good.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's nothing else scheduled after this. If there's any, if anybody has something quick they want to throw out there, totally.
You just hate
totally
us here. It's okay.
I have a joke.
I would love a joke.
Okay. It's kind of a one-liner, but get ready.
Okay.
What's the difference between a comma and a cat? Pause at the end of a clause versus clause at the end of a pause.
There we go.
Oh,
Nice.
that's so cute.
Oh, Lord.
Nice.
Just thought I'd make everybody smile before we left.
Yeah.
You better be laughing, you bastards.
It's better than telefragging a clan with my beefug noob cannon. Elite speak for you there, guys.
So anybody have any final thoughts they need to unburden themselves of?
I got some things. So I ended up finishing the Justice League Snyder Cut. I really liked it. No, I really liked it. I thought it was well done, and I thought his vision for the, because last I spoke, I was maybe 2/3 of the way through. It's 4 hours long, so, and I really liked it. I really did. I thought it was one of the better recent superhero movies, so if you're into that, it was really good. And I also watched The Stand on Amazon Prime, which was meh. I'm generally, like, his written work, I love Stephen King. Him as a person, I fucking hate the man. Oh, yeah. And a lot of the stuff that they've put on screen in his name, I've really not liked. Did you like The Stand? The original, yes.
Yeah, I did too.
The original's good.
The original is really good. This was kind of, I don't know, just too. I mean, if it was a book, it would be too wordy.
Yeah, that's normal. Like, the best TV show that's been put out in Stephen King's name is Kingdom Hospital.
That was really good.
Oh, yeah. I like that show. That was weird. Yeah. It was very cool.
It's older, not very, very old. It's like mid to early 20s, 2000s.
There's an aardvark, I think, as a representation of death or something. Yeah. I don't remember. There's a little girl.
It was on Sci-Fi
in a hospital.
It was on Sci-Fi. It's really good. Like, watch it. That's one of the better Stephen King things that's been put out in visual.
Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, but
yes.
In that vein, my final words are: I have a dream that one day black people, white people, and even Chinese people can all gamble together without getting different chips. Rush Hour.
Lord have yeah.
I rewatched the trilogy because I'm like, holy shit, these people would have been flogged in the middle of town square for making this movie.
Jamon Lee, Jamon.
Jamon Lee.
That whole
Or
scene.
Don't you never touch
You.
a Chinese man
Yes,
stereo
you.
CD player.
Me?
You know, the Human Rights Commission.
No, I'm me. Who are you?
No.
Yes, I am you.
Shanghai Noon was bad
You
too.
understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Oh, Jesus.
Jongwon.
Minions disavows our guest and
I've been in the silly sauce a little bit.
What?
Okay.
You? No, kidding.
Anybody else have to unburden themselves?
In this madness.
Yes.
Please write
well, I was
nice
just gonna say-
emails.
Yes. Especially, because if you're going to a doctor's office, any doctor's office in Canada, it would behoove you to make sure that you put effort into your emails on the off chance that Sora might be working there.
Because otherwise you'll meet her in person for the first time and only time ever.
You'll know. You'll know.
Sora will kick the
We
door
don't
in.
judge.
You'll be walking funny
We
afterwards.
judge.
That's how you'll know.
Anyway, I think this was a pretty darn good show, and
It was
let's
fun.
quit while
Thank
we're
you.
ahead.
Thank you
Good
so
night,
much, Eric.
everybody.
Night, everybody.
Goodbye.